You're listening to Systemic Error Podcast. The failure was designed.
Republicans explode at each other as dispute comes to a head. Stop embarrassing yourself, based on an article by Matthew Chapman. Shrimp, grits, and institutional decay. This was never about a conference. A Semafor report describes a text war between Sen, Roger, Wicker and Rep. Joe Wilson over whether the United States would host a future session of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, with Wilson repeatedly acting as if the deal were still alive even after Wicker said it was not. The reported details are almost comical: shrimps and grits, bravado, a Trump photo, and a delegation leader having to tell a fellow Republican to stop embarrassing himself. The comedy is the cover story. The real subject is who gets to speak for the state, who gets to improvise around that authority, and how much damage a politician can do while pretending a fantasy is still a plan. Power sat in Wicker's chair. Wicker is not just any Republican in this exchange. He chairs the Senate Armed Services Committee and serves on the Helsinki Commission. That means he has institutional standing, procedural leverage, and a direct role in how the US presents itself in international settings. When he said the matter was settled, that was not a suggestion. It was the exercise of authority. Wilson, by contrast, was lobbying for his home state and trying to drag the decision back into his personal orbit. That is the smaller, familiar Republican habit: confuse visibility with power, and then act shocked when the actual power holder refuses to indulge the performance. The Trump photo is the point. Wilson's post on X, paired with a photo of himself with Trump, tells you exactly what kind of politics this was. Not diplomacy, not planning, signaling. He was not trying to clarify an event schedule. He was trying to manufacture political reality through proximity to a stronger brand. That is the modern Republican method in miniature. Use the image of Trump to override ordinary institutional process, then call it momentum. The problem is not merely that this is childish. It is that it treats government as a stage prop for personal status claims. When a member of Congress uses a foreign policy gathering as a vehicle for home state chest thumping, the institution is no longer the point. Attention is misdirection as a habit. The source text leans into the absurdity of the spat, and it can obscure the more serious fact. One lawmaker was publicly asserting that preparations were underway after the host decision had already been rejected. That is not confusion. It is deliberate pressure dressed up as optimism. Wicker's blow-up may look rude, but it also exposes how often Republican power is now exercised through private chaos and public denial. Wilson keeps pushing, Wicker keeps correcting, and the party's deeper disorder sits underneath them both. One man tries to create facts by repetition, the other has to waste time extinguishing the lie. That is how institutional energy gets spent under an information-poisoned political culture. The real damage is the normalization. What makes this more than a petty feud is how easily it turns a major international forum into a venue for ego management. The United States either hosts an event or it does not. Delegations either speak with discipline or they do not. Here, the reported behavior suggests a political class comfortable treating those distinctions as optional so long as the optics can be massaged afterward. That is not a procedural hiccup. It is a governing style built on improvisation, denial and status display. The public gets told this is about catering. It is actually about whether elected officials believe institutions bind them at all. The pattern. This story is small in scale and large in meaning. It shows a Republican Party in which authority is fragmented, loyalty is performative, and the boundary between statecraft and personal branding keeps collapsing. Wicker's irritation is not the story's anomaly, it is the immune response. The larger lesson is simple: democratic institutions do not just fail through open assault. They also rot when office holders turn every decision into a loyalty contest and every correction into an insult. That is how power gets blurred, responsibility gets displaced, and public life gets reduced to theatrical nonsense with a congressional letterhead attached. You've been listening to Systemic Error. Thanks to Raw Story for today's article. With the automated voice of Arctic, thanks for listening.